You may remember earlier this season we looked at how to propagate coleus through stem cuttings in order to overwinter them and bring them in. Today we're looking at another annual and how to propagate it. This is purple sugarcane. It's a plant that we like to grow here in our children's garden each year. One, to teach children that sugar actually does come from a plant, and also we like the purple version just because it adds a little color into our garden here. Now sugarcane, as you can see, can easily reach 8 feet in one season. And as it grows, it kind of becomes cumbersome to think about having to dig this plant up to overwinter. As a tropical though, it will die out each winter if we don't do something about it. Now this is a monocot, as you can tell, with the parallel veins in the leaves, and it is a cane. And so you'll notice these rings that are on the stems, if you will, of the plant. So this is kind of similar to stem cuttings, but the one thing that we're going to note is these rings that are on the cane. We're going to actually harvest just one cane and take several cuttings from it. And you can see that these rings are where we're going to get the adventitious growth, both from the stem and the roots. And in fact, this is sort of doing it already here on this stem that is still attached to the main plant. You can see right here we've got another bud that's starting to break here, and then we have some adventitious roots that are starting to develop down here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and harvest one of these canes. Rather than digging up this whole plant, we're just going to harvest one of these canes in order to take some cuttings from it. So you can see here where we've cut our canes for propagation purposes. In warmer climates where they're actually trying to harvest the cane for sugar production, a lot of times they'll take more than one cut. And you can see the shoot that's regrowing here, and this is actually known as a ratoon. So this agriculture practice where you harvest the crop and then have a second regrowth is known as ratooning. Now it depends on the climate as to how many harvests that you can get off of a crop. But the initial crop that they planted is known as the seed crop, the main crop, or the principal crop. And then the harvest that comes off of the ratoon is known as the first ratoon, the second ratoon, and so on and so forth. Now this is an agriculture practice that's often used in monocots with both sugarcane, bananas, and rice. And it's actually a practice that dates back to the 1700s in China, so it's been used for centuries. We've got one more annual that we're going to show you how we overwinter it as the season begins to end. And this is the Calocasia mojito. Now, a lot of these can be marginal, especially in southern Oklahoma, so you might really be able to mulch them heavily and they actually overwinter. We've had a couple of them overwinter here in Stillwater, which is in north central Oklahoma. But just to be sure, because we never know how our winters can be, we want to go ahead and bring a couple in. Now you can see how, again, large they can get by the end of the season. So what we're going to do is propagate this through division. And basically that means we're going to dig one up. So you can see how large the plant gets, and we're not really worried about the big plant, but what we're looking for is just to harvest some of these smaller plants. Again, we're going to divide this from the main crown of the plant, and we'll pot these up in order to overwinter them for this spring. So once we've harvested our plant material, it's time to actually do the propagation. So we're going to go back to our canes here, and I'm going to show you two different methods that you can do. So again, we're looking at these growth rings that are on the cane. You can see how we've got some that are already actually creating roots here, and then there are a couple of buds that will be future shoots. So there's a couple of different ways of doing this. We're going to just go ahead and start by taking a cutting of this. And you're going to need some pretty good loppers to cut through this cane. And then we're going to cut down below. We want to at least get 2 of those rings in this. So one method of doing this is to actually take the whole cutting and put one ring below the ground and one ring above the ground, or the potting soil that you're using. So the ring that's below the ground is going to have adventitious roots that develop off of it, and that's going to become your new root system. The ring that is above the ground will start to produce more shoots and leaves, or also what is called ratoons, where those shoots develop from the stem growth. And so this will be a new plant for us next spring. Now again, the bigger the plant container you put it in, or the more cuttings you put in here, the larger plant you will have to put out next spring. Another method of propagating these canes through cane cuttings is to go ahead and take a cutting that just has one ring on it. And for this particular one, we're going to go ahead and just actually place it halfway in the soil on its side. Now, if you know about the xylem and the phloem system, that might seem a little against what we know as far as the fluids moving through the plant. But what's going to happen here is, again, the adventitious roots are going to develop on the bottom half of this ring, and the vegetative growth is going to develop on the top half of this ring. And we have an example of this here, as we've got some that have already started growing. So you can see how much the roots have started to develop and are growing down. And in fact, they're already growing out of our little container here. And then we've got some ratoons or shoots that are developing off of this cane. So obviously they're not going to grow all winter long in this container. This is just a container to kind of get them established. And then once they're established, we will pull this out and replant it into a larger container. So the next form of asexual propagation is division, and this is probably one of the most popular forms of propagation for many homeowners with their perennials, because it's simply going in and dividing your plant up. So in this case, we're doing it because we want to overwinter the smaller portion of our plant. And so we're just going to take some of these pups that we've harvested off of the mother plant and pot them up. Now again, you want to make sure that you put it in a size of a container that can handle it as it continues to grow throughout those winter months. But you can see here, we've got one here that's already taken off and really starting to fill up that pot, as this one will continue to do. The nice thing about calicaceous is they really appreciate a lot of water, so you can actually get a container that doesn't have holes in it and set this container inside of it and just fill it up with an inch or two of water, sort of creating a bog container garden inside your house. And so it really works well as a house plant. You don't have to worry about overwatering it too much. So whether you're doing stem cuttings, cane cuttings, or division, these are all great methods of propagation to get your garden started next spring.
We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. You can also find even more videos on our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.